Welcome to the Living Wholehearted podcast, where we're helping leaders live with integrity.
Whether you're a mom or a CEO, you're a leader, and how you lead matters.
Okay, I am back. It's just me today. Jeff is unavailable, but it doesn't stop us from continuing our interview with Marina Mitchell. We are so excited to have her. And if you have not listened to part 1 of this dialogue on healthy body image and a mindset for moving through the hard, I wanted to remind you that you can go back and listen to that. It might be helpful before we jump into part 2. And this part, we're going to talk a little bit more about Marina and her marriage, her walk with God, and how that impacts the way she lives her life and how she walks with others, including her husband. You mentioned something in the last episode, Marina. I'm grateful that you're here, and you are, let me just say again, a wife, a mom of adult children. How long have you been married?
26 years.
26 years, which is kind of a phenomenon in today's culture. And you're a fitness professional. I've been doing that for years. We talked a lot more about mind, body, and exercise and mindset for the new year and all the goals we're setting. So if you want more of that, go to part 1. You mentioned that having a strong body requires a lot of hard work, and just like having a strong marriage. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the marriage piece. Tell me a little bit more about your marriage.
Yes. Well, my husband is an awesome human being, I will say. Pretty amazing. We came into marriage actually having 2 not so great examples to look at, which I think a lot of people come from, broken families. Mine was extremely broken. My husband's not nearly as broken, but we both came in with some real solid goals. Like, okay, we are going to learn what we really want, but we don't really see that. But we have a lot of examples of what we don't want. So we came up with these ideals. We're both fairly idealistic, I will say, and which really has served us because we have seen what can happen when people don't work on their marriage.
Yeah.
So we're college sweethearts, and one of his college roommates or friends was married and divorced before the age of 22. And we talked to him and said, oh my gosh, like what happened? I didn't know him very well, actually. But my husband kind of interviewed him, quote unquote, and really trying to minister to him a little bit. And he basically said, what do we need to know? And the simplest thing that this guy told us was as soon as we got married, we quit dating. So we didn't ever really spend any time together because we already did that, right? Mm-hmm. And then we got married, and then it's almost like it's just supposed to come every day. But just as having a healthy body does not come by not eating or eating junk, a healthy marriage does not come naturally, really, for a lot of us. We do have to make choices every single day. So he challenged us. He said, actually, you guys should go on a date every single week. And at that point, right, we're like scared to death. And we're like, yes, we'll do whatever it takes. And so literally we did. We got married. We didn't have kids for over 3 years. And we went on a date every week. And we did not have a lot of money. So this was...
I was going to say, what was that like on the budget?
This was most of the time we went to a coffee house and we played cards and dice.
I love it.
Yeah. And we did that for at least 2 hours. And our rule was we could never go to a movie because going to a movie, you're not actually connecting, right? You're just sitting and watching. So,
though I love movies, but I can totally, it's not the best date.
Right. So we decided that dancing, we actually would go country dancing, hiking, really a lot of cheap stuff, right? Because my husband was a pastor, I was a school teacher. And then once we had children, of course, then you have to pay for babysitting. And I am an Excel spreadsheet kind of gal, and I just put it in our budget every single week. So once we had kids, we had to change it, and we had to do home dates every other week because we couldn't afford to pay a babysitter every week. That is invaluable time that we look back after 26 years. Now, our kids a year and a half ago both kids were shipped off, right? So we are empty nesters. We're not quite as good at going on dates now because we're together every evening, right? Just the two of us. But what happened in the first, I would say probably 5 years, is that established for us the commitment to be together, even when we didn't feel like it. Yes.
You talked about habits in the
That's
last
right.
That was a habit.
It was an expectation that is what we do. And for years, Thursday night was our date night. So neither one of us would ever plan anything. And it was you never plan anything on Thursday nights because that is date night. So for us, that really worked because sometimes if you leave it up to your schedule, like, well, let's see what night we have open. There won't be any nights that are open. So someone told us that, I think, establish one night a week, and it is sacred. So we called it our sacred night every week that we were just together. So it established, one, that we were committed, right? Whether we felt like it or not, or if we were busy or not. But two, it established this beautiful connection between the two of us that every single week, no matter what was going on, we were going to give each other our full attention. And I think that served us really well.
That's amazing. I have a couple clarifying questions, as I always do, Marina. Of course I do. But I just have to piggyback and say, okay, it's the beginning of the year. And we're so focused and we're on these goals. A lot of us think financial. We think about our bodies. And I go, this could be a really great tangible goal setting to just say, hey, wherever we are, if we're newlyweds, we're in the throes of family life, which is where I'm at.
Yes.
And this is the hardest stage. We've got sports galore, homework. Our careers are both in full bloom.
Yes.
And so that sacred night feels, to find Sabbath and find all kinds of other time is super hard. And yet it's like the most important time.
I know. I have friends who, like you and Jeff actually have, you work a ton, right? Because you're exploding, but you have freedom enough to maybe have a coffee date or a lunch date in the middle of the day.
Love it.
In the middle
outside
of the
the
week.
box.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for us, it was evening because we both had day jobs. But I do have one friend in particular that theirs is Friday mornings because they both have flexible schedules.
Okay, and I'm going to give one example of a couple. I love that this couple did this. I do not expect you all to do this, but they were in 4 children, one of them baby, adopted, full bloom careers, just so much going on. And they actually decided to get up, no joke, at 4 a.m. in the morning before the kids woke up.
Wow.
And they dedicated just a half hour. Just a half hour. It's not the same kind of fun you're talking about of playing cards.
Right.
But it was transformational to have that sacred space. But they did that half hour and they ended up doing it 3 times a week instead of a 2-hour chunk.
Yeah.
And it was a starting point to, I think, leading to more dates and prioritizing time together.
Well,
I just think the outside of the box.
That's right. Because the bottom line, it's about connecting. It's about looking in each other's eyes and knowing each other's hearts. And yes, having fun. My husband and I love to have fun. So we're always thinking about how we can have fun. But at the end of the day, we need to be connected and we want our hearts to be connected. I want him to know all the ins and outs about how I'm feeling about things. I would say that has probably kept us the closest. We're best friends. He knows everything about me. I have a lot of friends that their best friends are girlfriends. And I've kind of been jealous of that. I don't feel like the Lord's given me a ton of really deep girlfriends. And yet I just have to keep looking at this amazing relationship I have with my husband because really it comes down to just the two of us, right? Our kids grew up and moved away and our friends will come and go. And when we move or whatever, he's my best friend. Yeah.
It really is a testimony, and that's such a churchy word, but such a testament to all the little habit, the day in, day out choices that you made, the sacrifice, and sometimes it not being sacrificial, just being fun, but the choices you made and how you're paying off, that it's paying off. The second piece is a lot of couples after kids go, that's one of the highest divorce rates because you haven't spent the time.
Yeah.
And it feels overwhelming to recover. Let's speak to the couple real quick. What would you say to that couple that says, I don't really like my husband or my wife, and I really don't want to hang out with them?
Oh, goodness. And I do hear that a lot. And to be honest, I have had those feelings. I mean, let's just say it how it is. Sometimes, you look at your spouse and you're like, whoa, you're bugging me today. I really don't want to go on a date with you. So what I would say to that is kind of like what we talked about in the last time together. Everything worth having is hard work. And those of us who follow Jesus have an extra, I feel like, right, we've got supernatural power coming from his Spirit. So when I do not feel like doing what is right in my marriage, which I have those feelings, pretty often in 26 years, there are times I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. My husband wants to do this. I don't want to. And so I don't want to be sacrificial. And in our culture, everybody, you read it everywhere, you see it, you hear it. Whatever does not serve you, get rid of it. And that bugs me so much because there are so many things worth having that do not serve me in the moment, right? My husband is amazing and we have a great relationship, but there are absolutely days, and there may have been weeks, days on end, that I really wasn't feeling it. But that is never the right time to say, oh, I guess we just fell out of love. I don't know. I was with one of my friends, and she was telling me about a relationship, and they never got married, but they were together for 7 years. And she said, and the feeling just went away. And so she broke it off with him and is now trying to date other people. And she said, so how do you do it for 26 years? And I said, well, it's a decision. So there are times where I think my feelings aren't quite where my commitment is. But commitment and loyalty doesn't require feelings. So the beautiful thing about when we're following Jesus and being obedient, you talked about being obedient in our last talk. When we're obedient to do what is right and what we know is right, God always brings the feelings. He always does. My in-laws have been married for 55 years, just celebrated their 55th year anniversary. And it has been a beautiful thing to watch their relationship ebb and flow. And I would say on their 55th anniversary, they're probably more in love than ever. That is not to say they have not gone through the ringer. They've had horrible things that could have ruined many marriages. But they decided to stick with it. And I just have looked at them for years thinking, look at the beauty that God brings from that commitment. So a lot of it is a choice. We talk about making decisions and making choices. And so every day looking at my marriage and my husband, and honestly, when we're not feeling it, typically means we better go on a date or we need a weekend away. Because as soon as we get away from all of the pressures, we remember.
You remember.
Oh, I love you. You're the best, right?
Yeah, we do. We see what's underneath all the layers of stress again.
The daily grind, right?
That's so good. It's so good. And it is, I guess I want to make sure that it's to the listener hearing that if you're in that place where you're like, this is really difficult marriage, and maybe even if you've been divorced or and you love Jesus, there's no judgment on that, and there's no shame here. We're just talking about those that are in this journey of saying, give me some tips. How do you still like your husband after 26 years? And this is really profound. As a marriage and family therapist who has worked most of the time, people don't come to counseling unless they're in that really difficult place. I really love the client that's like, we love each other. We just want to keep working on it. That is like my ideal client right there. But the idea of the habit and the choice, and you knowing kind of like how you encourage with the working out and the choices with food, you know what it can do in the long run.
Yes.
And if you based it off of, I just don't feel like it. That's how I get up and go work out at the crazy hour that I do. Because I remember the long term, how it helps me in the rest of the day, how it's made a difference over years.
Right.
And so the same with your marriage, the date. This is going to be good for us. It's going to be good for us.
And I too, admittedly, I am married to a man who is just as committed as I am to a healthy marriage. So
That's key.
That is key. And I don't negate at all. I have a lot of women in my life who are saying, I'm really trying, but my husband isn't. Or a man saying,
That's
well,
important.
I'm really trying, but it seems like my wife has given up. And I think that that's different. And that's honestly where you would come in. As a therapist, I don't have that kind of education or expertise. So I'm only really speaking from my position of I didn't really have a good example. And yet with God's help, people ask me actually a lot, how do you do it? How do you do it?
You're now the example, Marina.
Right.
It's so cool how God does that.
Well, it's kind of crazy. And what I say to a lot of people, I don't care if you're a believer or not, I have to give kudos to God. And I just say, you know what, we are Jesus lovers and Bible followers. So one of the things actually my husband told me, and this kind of cemented that, yep, this is the guy for me. He said, I will always love God more than I love you. And I literally just breathed a sigh of relief, because what that means is that when he is tempted to look at another woman, God is going to tell him that that's not okay, and he wants to be right before God. So it means that I don't have to police that kind of stuff or fear that, because God is so good in his goodness and his graciousness and his presence with us. He's going to do that for my husband, and I don't have to. So
I love that. And actually, I just have to say, that's true for Jeff and I as well. And it's one of the secret sauces too, is that our God stand is way more important, and we care more what he thinks of us, and we know that he loves us no matter what. So when we don't like each other, sometimes I can go to God and go, well, you like me still.
that's right.
But that is something on the early side of our marriages that we had intact.
Right.
And that I see in my office that's difficult, is sometimes we sacrifice that for the sake of whatever our story is and the struggle we had and why we married the person we had. And so I think that is a key factor. And for those who are maybe not married yet and are listening and or considering a spouse, that it's, do they love God?
Right.
Genuinely, not just with head knowledge, but with heart and gut with their life. Not that they're fully mature. I'm sure your husband has matured over the years.
Yes. Well, we both have, thankfully.
Thankfully.
Yes.
Well, give us maybe one other of your habits or tips when people are watching you and saying, how do you guys do it? So you go on a date, you've been doing dates. Anything else you want to tell?
Yes. Oh, I have to say, there is a couple. They were actually our college professors. We went to Bible college, and that's where we met. And they were in our wedding. This older couple did a blessing over us. And one of the things they said, because they had such a good relationship after being married at that point, they were probably married for 20 or 25 years. And we were just starting out, and we were sitting with them and said, we interviewed a lot of people. I will just say, right, we're type A and idealistic. So I wanted to know.
You wanted to know.
How? What? Yeah. Give us, your secret. And they summed it up in 2 words, and it was, be nice.
Oh, it's so simple.
Amazing. Just be nice. And so they went on to say how naturally we always put our better self on for strangers. And yet the people that we live with and committed our whole lives to, we really show a horrible side of ourselves. And not that we want to, keep on a mask or anything at home, but we always have choices of how we're going to say something. So we really took that into consideration. And we have had, I don't know, neither one of us are yellers or anything like that, but we have had probably 2 or 3 kind of yelling, like where we said something that we really regretted, maybe 2 or 3 times in our whole marriage, because we decided at the very beginning, we're going to be nice. We're going to treat each other better than we treat anybody else. So if I'm treating someone at my work better than I treat my husband, there is something wrong with that picture. So I would say in general, we try to just be nice and choose kind words and phrases and be really respectful even in disagreement. And believe me, right, 26 years, we have disagreed a lot, right?
Yeah, that's
sometimes
a
have to walk away.
set that so many don't get because our families of origin, we don't see
Yes.
that. We don't know what that looks like. And none of us, you only get one family to kind of see what that looks like.
That's
or
right.
if you're bouncing around to homes, that's not healthy either.
Right.
So how did you learn to be nice? Like how did you go, oh, this is how I disagree and do conflict. Feel what I feel, be honest about what I need to say, and still do it and be nice.
Well, we really swung to the other side once within our first month of marriage. And ironically, I had my Bible out and open. And honestly, it's really embarrassing. We got in a big fight about something. And I ended up throwing, or maybe he threw the milk carton. I can't remember.
Through the Bible.
No, but here's
threw
what
the Bible.
happened. I think he threw the milk carton at me, and I kind of slammed down my bowl of cream of wheat, and the cream of wheat went everywhere and little spots all over my Bible. So I just constantly had a reminder of what it looked like for us to lose our temper. And the rest of the day, we both lived in horrible regret. But that's he actually saw silence. So his family did not argue. If you didn't agree, then you didn't speak. And then mine was yelling and throwing things and even worse. So we really had to come to, I needed to be able to express myself, right? But do it in a way that was respectful. And he needed to actually learn how to express himself because he didn't really know how to do that. So we swung to the other side. We hated it. And at the end of the day, that we came back together and we said, we will never do that again. Right? That wasn't respectful. It wasn't kind. And it actually didn't get us anywhere.
Yeah.
So let's get down to what really we're frustrated about. Try to communicate that. If we can't, we say, I'm really frustrated with you right now and I can't articulate it actually. So give me a couple hours and maybe I can articulate it later, but just hang with me.
You give each other a timeout.
Yeah.
And just like working out with our bodies.
That's right.
There are techniques that help us keep the heart rate down after we've hit, right? Like I remember taking your spin classes and you would hit us peak and I'm like barely can keep my breath in. There's ways for us to calm ourselves down, get back to recover.
Yes.
It's the same emotionally.
Yeah.
And those timeouts do help us.
Yeah.
Give us perspective. Marina, this is what I do. I would like to say that I do this every time, but I don't. But in my best self, I literally force myself to open the Bible when I go, I do something, I move my body to get some of my angst out. I'm actually pretty fiery.
Yes.
And so Jeff bought me a punching bag.
Oh, nice.
So that I could go punch something because I get really feisty and I've never hit him. So please make sure that's clear.
Yes.
But I definitely feel it and I can feel it coming out of my mouth, like it'll fire out with verbal attacks. And so I have to step back so I can go get it out and feist it out with my body somehow. And I'll hit my pillow. I will actually scream in my car but I have to get it out.
Yeah.
And then I will open the word and God's always so good to help me clarify what was my part.
Oh, and that's the hardest part when you have to swallow it and say, okay, this is where I contributed, right, to this.
And I laugh because I say, people don't read my journals because those are all the parts. Those are Jeff's parts. I don't seem to write down my part. I write down all of Jeff's part. I write down all the ways that he's offended me. And the Lord kind of reminds me at the end always, like, here's his truest self. Here's the part you contributed. That's what I do. What do you do when you take that 2-hour break? And you go get perspective, calm down.
Well, you're going to think I'm very unspiritual, but I love shopping and not even buying. I often will go to Michael's or Joann's or Ross and just look around. Going on a walk is always good. Yeah, typically I will say ours will happen more in the afternoon or the evening, and I do not work out in the afternoon or evening. So for me, it's about getting out of the space. When I'm really upset, I clean. So I clean my house, and I have to be really productive. Yeah. So
do something.
I need to. I just need to put my mind somewhere else. It's what I need to do. And so does he. And so then we can come back with fresh minds. And as the Spirit does, he always softens us in those little moments of separateness, right? And we get to go away. And he softens us, and we come back and we really try to own our part. Like, okay, this is what I did. And when you come back together like that, right? When I see that he's got a little humility and said, okay, and then I can own part of it, we're both soft, and then we can get down to the root. Mm-hmm. There's always a root, right, to arguments.
That's also a habit. I feel like that by the time I'm seeing clients, often there's no habits involved there. So we're really slowly doing it in my office where it's safer.
Right.
So that it can develop back at home. But if this is something you do on a regular basis, it doesn't ever have to get to those huge mountains that you feel.
And that's exactly right. It is habit. So for us now, I mean, I can't even tell you the last time either one of us ever yelled at each other, because we don't do that. We will communicate. I am very frustrated right now, right? But we don't yell. So we took that out in our first several years, that really wasn't an option. So yeah, that's funny. I haven't thought about that in a long time.
It is. It's totally intentional on your part. And I love, so for the listener, if you're listening to this and I can imagine lots of emotions of all the different marriages and where you're at. And if you're not married, you're like, oh, score, I'm learning lots of things early. But here's a little tip. Consider what are the things you will do to calm yourself down. If you don't know what those are, work on that first. Then maybe consider at a very neutral time, talk to your spouse about what's the words you want to use when you both need a timeout, basically. We do this in parenting as well. It's best to not try to coach your children in the middle of a temper tantrum. And we're all throwing our temper tantrums at that time. We don't hear each other. Our kids' lids are flipped. Ours are flipped. So it's basically our timeout to calm down. So figure out what that is for you. Maybe ask your spouse what's their calm down. And what's the word? I hear your words are, I'm frustrated right now. Those are your cues.
Yes.
I will often say, and Jeff and I use that lid flipping number system, 1 to 10. I'm getting over a 5 right now. If I'm getting close to an 8, that's when I start to get very fiery with my mouth. So I don't want to get there. So we'll use number systems, but come up with that as a couple. Figure out what works for you. I like it. I'm getting frustrated.
I'm getting frustrated. Yes. Well, I learned early on that you're bugging me actually really doesn't work very well.
And most couples, we do say things that actually cue us or trigger us more. So we have to, at a neutral time, talk about what language can we use that doesn't feel like it's going to make more conflict.
Right. I would just say, too, and just in fully wrapping up, to make sure to spend time thinking about your spouse and all the things that you love about him or her.
How do you make that a habit? Let's set a goal for 2020.
Yeah, you know what? I flip it, because even now, and if my husband's listening, sometimes you still bug me. But sometimes when in my mind, I'm like, oh, I hate when he does that. Or right then. So my habit is right then, I will think about something I love about him. So just like an exercise, it can become this steamroller. Like, I hate it. No, I'm not going to do it. It's so dumb. I hate sweating or whatever. And all of a sudden you're in this thing like, I'm never exercising again. It's kind of the same thing with our thought patterns about people, but specifically about the people we live with forever, right?
Well, this is what I love about you, Marina. We're going to wrap up a little bit. There's so much more we can talk about. So I'm going to have you back. We're going to unpack more. Maybe we'll bring Sean in and Jeff, and we'll have a dialogue, all four of us. And we'll let them have a say in this marriage talk. But one thing I love about you is, again, how God is using you in the fitness world. Really, you see beyond people's bodies and what you're doing and moving their bodies and using it to really get to their heart. God's using you and just who you are, right where you are. And so letting that be an encouragement to our listeners that wherever you're at, whatever you are doing, God is using you, and people are watching. People are watching you and your husband. And it really is just these small habits, like our physical health, small habits with where we put our minds, how we focus. And so I'm not trying to do a plug for my book, but I am. Chapter 4, I talk a lot about a woman of courage. She listens to the voice of grace, and that is a discipline. And when you talked about that habit, I have to do that all the time, where the voice of shame goes down the, I'm a terrible wife because I didn't cook dinner tonight, and I said that snarky comment, or Jeff is this and that and that and that. Or I go to, am I going to listen to the voice of grace? Who is Jeff outside of, like, at his core? And remember those things. Remember who you are, Tara, at your core, and who you want to be. So the voices in our head and that discipline. So all of it's holistic with who you are and all you're doing. And so, and help us with this last little discipline you have in your life. You probably don't even see it that way, but it is. You wake up in the morning and you spend time with Jesus.
Oh, man.
How did that habit form? And I think if we were to think about all the habits in our life for 2020, or whatever the year is now that you're listening to this, it could be 2025. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, right.
But what habit? How did you get there?
I came to Jesus just out of pure desperation. I needed him. I came from a really rocky childhood, and he saved me. That scripture that he pulled you out of the slimy pit. So honestly, it hasn't been like, oh, I need to have a quiet time. It's never been that. It has been, oh, I cannot wait to sit with Jesus today. And I don't know, a long time ago, well, I was 17 when I found Jesus, so I would see myself crawling up in his lap. And he hugs me and holds me and teaches me, convicts me, right? But there's no shame or guilt.
He's nice.
He's so nice. Yeah. And so loving. And I can't wait for that. So yes, I don't see it as a discipline because I can't wait every morning to see what God has. And honestly, to lay out my heart. A lot of people at my work have said, are you really this happy? You are so kind to everyone. Is this real? And I just tell them, again, whether they believe in Jesus or not, I'm like, you know what? Every day I sit with Jesus and I dump out all of the stuff I'm scared about or what. So I don't need to give that to other people during the day because I dump it out at his feet and then he fills me back up with his presence. And then I'm ready to be his servant for the day. So it truly comes from a surrendered heart. I would say that feels very free.
And you have a really good friend in your husband, too.
Yeah.
And that is profound. So for those that don't have that in their marriage, that God would provide another friend to you, a human being. But when you crawl into his lap, I love the way you visualize that. And I think that is kind of like with working out, that you've got to reframe what this is about that would woo you to it.
Yes.
If this is you're going to really screw up today unless you spend your time in your quiet time.
Right.
That's the way we frame it so often.
Right. Like exercise, right. You're going to get fat if you don't do it, and that's just the wrongest way to go about it.
Totally. I love our voices, how we're changing that. Okay. Oh, I love this time, Marina. All right. Well, before we close, if you want to learn more about Marina, she's just an amazing woman. And I don't mean to send more stalkers your way, Marina, but you can follow her at her Facebook. How do they find you?
I think it's just under my name. I'm not fantastic at social media, but you could message me in all my fitness endeavors and educational trainings. That's how people find me, is through Facebook as well. So you just look up Marina Mitchell, and I'm in the Portland area.
Wonderful. And she's one of our amazing 40 speakers that are coming to share at the Encourage Gathering on March 13th and 14th. Registration will be closing in the next couple months. So if you want to go to her breakout, you better sign up now because it's going to fill, if it hasn't filled already, at theencouragegathering.com. And you can find that in the information in the bio of this podcast. So thank you so much for your time and just sitting with us and sharing the wisdom and your life.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, for those listening, we've got so many more exciting interviews ahead. Jeff and I are going to be sharing a little bit more of our story and tackling some more topics in leadership and integrity, marriage, parenting. If you're really enjoying what you're hearing, make sure you share this with others. We really want people to hear the message of grace and how to live a life of integrity. It's possible. So many of us, like you said, Marina, don't have examples. And there are many of us who God is saying, I want to show who I am through you. And it's possible. We're not perfect. as we shared.
Clearly.
Clearly, it's obvious. But what we do know is we have a big, big God who loves us and who's present with us and is using us right where we're at. And we really want to share that message with everybody and anybody. That you are seen, you are known, you are loved, and you are courageous. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us in being a leader committed to shrinking the integrity gap between the values we espouse and the values we actually live out in practice.